Welcome to our class on Chassidus. We're going to be learning today a very, very powerful and classic Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe. So with an introduction, the previous Rebbe, before he passed away, he gave out a Chassidic discourse called Baasi, lgani, which had 20 chapters. And every single year, on the anniversary of the passing of the previous Rebbe, and when the Rebbe took over leadership, he would again recite the Chassidic discourse and explain every year another section of the Chassidic discourse in depth. And so, for example, the first cycle of the 15 years, so in the 15th year, the Rebbe gave this Chassidic discourse, which again, the Rebbe said on Yud Shvat in the year Tavshin Chav Hei. And we're going to learn this powerful Chassidic discourse. What I want to say is it's a classical Chassidic discourse because it establishes the leadership of the Rebbe and the anniversary of the leadership, and because it's something which continues the legacy of the Chabad movement. So you'll see in the Chassidic discourse the Rebbe brings in a teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, from the Maggid, from the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, the Marash, the Rashab, and obviously the Frierdiker Rebbe. The idea is to bring in these powerful teachings, is to unite all the powerful souls of the Chabad dynasty and the Chassidic dynasty all into this Chassidic discourse. So again, the Chassidic discourse is based on the verse in the prophets from King Solomon that says, Baasi, lgani, I came to my garden, אחותי, Kala, my sister, my bride. Rebbe says that he brings from the teaching of the Baal Hilul, the one that passed away, the Frierdiker Rebbe. So he brings a teaching of the Medrash. And the Medrash explains this verse that says, lgani, to my garden, it says, lignuni. So what does it mean, lignuni, to my garden? It means to the place that I was, my main stay was there in the beginning. What does that mean? Because when Hashem originally created the world, so in the Hebrew it's called the Iker Shechina B'Tachtoin Moisa. The main presence, dwelling of Hashem was in this world, in the physical world. And then what happened was, sadly, by the fact that Adam went ahead, the first human being sinned, and with the primordial sin, so the Shechina, the presence of Hashem, left this world into the heaven. And the generations after that they still were not listening to God. So the Shechina, the presence of Hashem, went from one heaven to the next heaven until it went up to the seventh heaven. Afterwards, after this, the process where it left to the earth and then to the seven heavens. So then, through the tzaddikim, the righteous people, the fathers of the world, they went ahead and they brought it down from the seventh heaven to the sixth, until the seventh, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. And we know the Rebbe says the seventh is always beloved. And he brought the Shechina, the presence of Hashem, the godliness of Hashem, down from heaven to this earth. And that's the whole idea, to the place that I was there before. And the goal is to bring down that there should be Shechina, the dwelling, the presence of Hashem should dwell into this physical world. And that's why the verse says, V'yishkenu, and it should rest, la'ad, everlasting aleha. In other words, when you're dealing with the tzaddikim, the righteous people, and the righteous people is not just certain people. The amei chulam tzaddikim, everyone's a tzaddik. What's our job as a tzaddik in this world? What's our job? Is to make a dira lo yizbarach b'taktoinim. We have to make a dwelling place for Hashem. We're down in this physical world. How do we do that? We do it by iskafia, practicing restraint. Every time we resist listening to our animal soul and our Yetzer Hara, that's first level. The second thing is transformation. Not only do we practice restraint, we actually transform. What do we transform? Sitra Achra, the other side. So then what we create is, and I'll say it in Aramaic and translate it, what we create is Istalik, Yikara, the Kucha, Bricha, the Kolon Alman, which means the specialty, the preciousness of God is felt in this world. What is that? That's referring to the part of Hashem that's in all worlds equal. And it should be felt in this world. It should be felt. What does that mean practically? So the terms of Kabbalah is that the revelation the revelation of Soivev Klam, the part that hovers over the world, is too powerful to come into the world, should come into this world. That energy which is on all worlds the same, Soivev Klam, should come into this world. And that's why the verse says, V'shachanti b'soicham, I'm going to dwell amongst them. Where is that? So we know Hashem dwells in the Mishkan, the tabernacle, in the Bet HaMikdash. But the verse says, B'toicham, plural, which means that Hashem dwells within every single Jew, and in there Hashem dwells, and he's there forever, because we bring down the Shekhinah, the presence of it, the godliness of Hashem into this world. And therefore, in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, and in the Beit HaMikdash, and what's the purpose of the Mishkan is Mishachanti, that God should be able to dwell down here. So what is the avodah? What was the spiritual service in the Mishkan? With sacrifices and also incense. And like it says in the Zohar, Raza the Kabbalah, the powerful energy of the sacrifice. Oila goes up ad Raza the Ein Sof, it goes up till the infinite part of Hashem. Or like it says in the Torah, Nachas Ruach, the pleasing fragrance that Hashem received. That Shamarti, he said what he says, his commandments. We're not signing, we listen to Hashem. And we do that, we bring down that powerful energy down into this physical world. So therefore, since where did that happen? In the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, in the Beit HaMikdash. So that's why the Mishkan was built from Atzei Shittim, acacia wood. And like the Medrash says, that Shittim comes from the word of shtus, silliness. Why is that? Because our job is to transform the silliness of the world and to make the planks that would stand for the walls of the Mishkan. Why is that? Because the planks are called keroshim, and it's plural. In singular, it's a keresh. No, so keresh has the letters of kufrei shin, but if you take the words and you take the letters and you spin it around, you have the idea of the letters of also sheker, falsehood. And like it's explained at length in the continuation of the Chassidic discourse, that the letters of keresh, kufrei shin, refers to the idea of a spiritual level and also serving Hashem. And when we go ahead and we take from this sheker, from the falsehood of the world, and we make the keresh, the part, the big part of the tabernacle, which was made from wood, which is shittim, silliness, on a certain level, then we are able to create things that stand up and they withhold, and like the beams that connect the high and the low and the high, and literally they become one. And how does that happen? It happens through doing our spiritual work of shtus the kedusha. Sometimes you have to be crazy good. Something you have to be off the charts good. And when a person does things without any calculations, and you do what Hashem wants, and you don't try to logically figure it out and it makes sense or feel good, if Hashem wants you to do it, that's how you go ahead and you transform the world. Now, who does this work? The Jewish people do the work. And that's why the Jewish people in the Bible are called Tzivos Hashem. We're in the army of Hashem. And he continues on to explain what is the army. And those the army is the people that through them you're able to go out and wage war. We're talking spiritual war, not physical war, and to be successful in the war. And like we see the way it works down in this world, that when it comes to a war, the king, it's important to win the war. So the same thing also, Hashem wants us to win the war. And therefore, since Hashem wants us to win the war, he has to give us tools, he has to give us ammunition. So when you have a physical king, what does he do? He opens up when it comes to war, they open up all the treasures. Not only his treasures, but the treasures from his ancestors, and any treasure gets pulled out. And things that are even very, very precious. So precious that you don't even show it to anybody. And how much more so you're not going to give it to anybody. But on the other hand, when it comes to a war, and being, so A, a war, but B, also being successful in the war, in Hebrew it's called nitzachin, to be successful in war, he opens up the treasure houses and he actually gives it out, and he gives it out happily. And he gives it through the people that are in charge of the war, to the people fighting the war, like he says, to the Tzivos Hashem, the people that are fighting God's war, so that we should be successful. Obviously, again, we're talking about a spiritual war. Now, so in other words, so what is Hashem giving us? Hashem is giving us the tools. What's the tool? So he says he opens up the oitza, the treasure. And that's what he gives us to be successful in the war. So obviously in a physical army, we know what the treasure is. But the question is, what treasure is Hashem giving us to fight the spiritual war that we can bring godliness down to the world? So now we're going to go into, in depth, more of the 15th chapter. He says, in order to understand this powerful treasure that Hashem is giving us, so he gives an introduction. What it says in the Zohar, and Tikkunei Zohar, and he says like this. I'll say it in Hebrew because this is what it's based on, and then we'll get into it, we'll explain it. And he says as follows. The treasure that he's giving us is, what the Zohar says, Oir Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem, And this powerful infinite light is Lamayla Mayla Adin Ketz. It's high off the charts. Ulamata Mata Adin Tachlis is low off the charts. And he finishes off, he says that it says Lamayla Mayla Adin Ketz, that the infinite light is very, very high. That's the treasure. So you want to know what treasure we're getting to fight the war? Oyrin Seif, Hashem gives us the infinite light, which is Lamayla Mayla Adin Ketz. Again, just to clarify, that when we say high and low, we don't mean physically higher or physically lower. We're talking spiritually higher. Okay. So he says, in order to understand with tremendous expansion of understanding and with tremendous depth, the power of this treasure, which is Oyrin Seif, the infinite, which is on the high, Lamay and Ketz. So therefore, before that, in the previous chapter, before chapter 15, he explains the tremendous power of the Oyrin Seif that has the power to go lamata, to the lowest levels, adding tachas without any limit. In other words, the power, the infinite light of Hashem, Oyrin Seif, has the power to go down to the lowest places, up to the point wherever it is. Even in the lowest, darkest, concealed places, guess what? The infinite light is there. So this shows how powerful this powerful light is. So that's what he explained before. So now in this chapter, he's going to explain the real power of when we say the infinite light is Lamayla Mayla Adin Ketz. It's high. It's highest in the highest level, up to like almost like an infinite level, and which is obviously even higher than Lamata. Then that it has the power to go to the lowest places. And he finishes off and he says, that's the treasure. That's the treasure Hashem gives us. In other words, that even this powerful treasure, he gives us, people fighting the war, to be successful in the war. And not only does he give it to us, he says, but he gives it in a way of bizbuz. He's like totally giving it to you with abundance and as much as you need, with happiness, and you should be able to be successful in the war. So what do you see from here? Why is he giving it to you if it's such a powerful treasure? Because what's important to Hashem is, Hashem wants us to be successful in the war. And this is important to the king himself. He's giving you the treasure. He's giving it. Why is he giving it to you? Because it's important that we be successful in the war. And he says in the 15th chapter, after he explains the idea of Lamata and Tachas, that the light has the power to go to the lowest places, he says, in order to understand the power of this treasure of Lamayla and Ketz, which is again also referring to the infinite part of Hashem Oyrin Seif. So he says it's similar to what we explained before about Lamata and Tachas, that has the power to go to the lowest places, that it's drawn down to the lowest places. So based on that, we'll understand that when we say Lamayla and Ketz, it's even higher. But the difference is, when it's even higher, it's in a way of high, but it's a way of concealment. In other words, it's standing in a way, it's very, very high, but he uses the word, and I'll say it in Hebrew, and I'll translate it, it's in a way of helem achar helem. This powerful light is concealed, and it's a double concealment. And in two ways, like it explains in the Chassidic discourse, that we're dealing with light, oir, and we're dealing with Ein Sof, between revelation, and both the light and both the revelation are both concealed. So oir Ein Sof, Lamaila is referring to a very high level, that is, the light is concealed and the revelation is concealed. And that's the gift that he gives us. And so he explains as follows. He says, one second. Seemingly we have to understand, he asks a very simple question. This that we say, that we learned last year in chapter 14, etc., that Oyrin Seif, the infinite part of Hashem, goes down lamata, the places which are God's concealed. Yeah, that's self-understood. Why? Because what does Oyrin Seif mean? It's infinite. And it's like the light before the contraction, infinite light. So obviously when you say that powerful light comes into the concealed places and even lower into the most darkest places, yeah, that obviously makes sense, because how can you compare it to the light before the Tzimtzum? So that we understand the big revolutionary idea that the Oyrin Seif goes down to dark places. Yeah, it's dark, it's finite, it's a counter of godliness. So we get it why it says Oyrin Seif. But seemingly, how can you explain that we say that the infinite part of Hashem is it's even very, very high? It's referring to the infinite part of Hashem, because the fact is, if we're dealing with the infinite part of Hashem, before the Tzimtzum, sure, it's infinite. So what are we saying? What's the revolutionary idea over here that we say Oyrin Seif is Lamayla Adin Ketz on the highest level? Yeah, for sure. Before the Tzimtzum, the Oyrin Seif is infinite. So what he explains over there, that when he says Lamaila Ad Ein Ketz, what does it mean? It means high, uses two terms, high and concealed. And like he already explained the word before, helem acher helem, like a deep concealment. Up Ad Ein Ketz means there's no limit to the concealment. So in other words, what is the treasure that we're focusing on? We're focusing on the treasure which is the Oyer Ein Sof, the infinite part of Hashem, which exists on higher and higher, but more importantly, concealment of concealment of the light, and concealment of the revelation. That's what Hashem gives us. Okay, so what is that? So he says he brings a teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Like he says that it's actually brought down in the classical book of the Baal Shem Tov called Keser Shem Tov, and he brings the verse that says Bereshis bara Elokim. So right in the beginning of the Bible, right in the beginning of the Chumash, it says Bereshis in the beginning, bara Elokim, God created, es Hashemayim, etc. So the Baal Shem Tov brings that what is Bereshis. He brings the teaching and the translation of the Targum that Bereshis, which is literally translated as beginning, he says. Bereshis means Chachma, the Chachmosa, right? Chachma. The first one of the Sfiros. So Chachma is the Reshis, the beginning. And it's the Ois Aleph, it's the first thing. So basically, Bereshis is Chachma and the letter Aleph. And Hashem, right? Hashem. Bereshis bara Elokim, Hashem, he got concealed and he put on the garment of the Ois Aleph. So in other words, when you see the beginning and you see the first letter Aleph, what do you see? You see an Aleph. The Baal Shem Tov teaches us, no, you see the Aleph, you know what's hiding? You know what's hiding in that Aleph? You know what's concealed in the Aleph? Hashem is hiding in the Aleph. Then he says, S, Bereshis bara S. S is the letters of Aleph, which is the first letter of the alphabet, and the Tuf, the last letter. In other words, it's referring to the letters from the Aleph to the Tuf, which means after God went ahead and put on these garments and he clothed himself, what you see is an Aleph, but really it's Hashem hiding there. So now it got enclosed into the base. So the base is not just a base. A base is God is hiding in there. And through the fact that God is hiding in the letter base, so Hashem is hiding in the letter Aleph and the letter base. So when he's hiding in the letter Aleph, so again, what we see is an Aleph, but the fact is Hashem is in there. So Aleph is very, very powerful. So through the letter Aleph, Hashem created the world of Atzilus. Atzilus starts with the letter Aleph. Then when Hashem went ahead and he got concealed in a double concealment in the letter Beis, that we see a Beis, but the fact is that letter Beis, that looks like a Beis, the fact is Hashem is hiding there. And he used the Beis to create the world of Bria. And then he went to the letter Gimel, and then, etc., every single letter, till he went into the letter Tuf, the last letter in the alphabet. And the Rebbe says, what is Tuf? Tuf is referring to the idea of 400 worlds that Hashem created by coming into the letters of Aleph, Beis, etc., till he comes to the letter Saf. So what you see is a letter, but really what's in the letter? Hashem is hiding in there. And through that he created Atzilus, Bria, and all the 400 worlds. And after that, he comes even lower. It means he's putting on garments and he's concealing himself and more concealing himself up to the point that he created the toyu v'voyu, the chaos, the confusion, the darkness that exists. That's all coming from what? From the concealment of Hashem created the world, which is referring to the obviously the chaos world is called the world of the klipot. And how does it come from? Bereshis bara Elokim. It all came from the Shem Elokim. What is the name Elokim? We know it was referring to the idea of Gevura and Tzimtzum, strength and constraint. So what do we see from here? That when it goes on higher and higher, Oyer Ein Sof is on the highest level. In other words, the way Oyer Ein Sof is revealed before the Tzimtzum, before Hashem made the Tzimtzum, the contraction. And because at that point, obviously, the infinite part of Hashem was all over. So what happens afterwards, that powerful light gets enclosed in a concealment and a double concealment, up to the point where you have the light that was revealed before the Tzimtzum is totally concealed. And like he says, that when he created the tzimtzum, he basically created an empty space, meaning say there was light there, and he put the light on the side. So if you have light and you take the slide out, what do you have? You have concealment. And then you have where the light actually goes away. He put the light on the side, and when the light's not there, it's not only the light is not there, then you don't have the revelation. Even with the light is, it's there where it's not revealed. So one level is the light is not there. B, where the light can be there, right there, and you just don't see it. It's not being revealed. And that's why he says in the Chassidic discourse, what does that mean? Concealment within a concealment. There's no light and there's no revelation. And based on this, he explains the power of the Maila Adin Ketz, just like we learned in the chapter 14, which we learned at length last year, of the Mata and Tach, Hashem is found on the lowest levels. But so the point is that even over here, Hashem is there on the highest levels, but he's in a way of concealment and not being revealed. And he explains over there that this idea, it's not on a level where Hashem is so concealed and you can't it's concealed and it's not revealed. But it's not on the level where it's so concealed and you cannot reveal it. But before, by the way, he had the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Like we said, he's going to bring a teaching from every one of the Chassidic rabbis, the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, and also from all the Chabad Rebbeim. So now he's going to bring a teaching from the Maggid of Mezrich. And like it's brought down in the Rimzei Torah and Parshas Ba'aloischa, and he says like this, based on the verse that says in the Torah, Asei l'cha shtei chatzotzros, kesef, make 2 trumpets of silver. So that's the literal translation. Comes along the Maggid, and he explains what is the idea of the 2 trumpets of silver. So he says it's 2 chatzoi tzuros, 2 half images. So what is the 2 half images? He says it's referring to Adam. Adam is obviously a word for Adam, right? But also he says now he's going to explain what does Adam mean. So he says like this. Adam is made up of 3 letters, Aleph, Daled, and Mem. Let's deal with the second and third letter. The Daled represents the idea of dibur, speech, and the Mem stands for machshava, thought. And that's what human beings are. We are our thoughts and our speech. But we're not complete on our own. So how do we become complete? Shtei chatzoi, 2 half of images. When we connect to the Aleph, what's the Aleph? The Aleph is referring to Hashem. So Adam is what? Aleph is Hashem. Daled Mem is dibur machshava, our thought and our speech, and we connect the 2. That's where we become complete. How does that happen? How does it happen? And he explains in this. So this is what Hashem went ahead and he made many contractions in many worlds, and he explains that by creating contraction after contraction, concealment after concealment. Guess what? We arrived. We're here. We exist because God is concealed. In other words, and why did Hashem do this? Why did Hashem conceal himself? So you might think he conceals so you can exist. Then they say, no, it's not. No, it's not that Hashem conceals so we should exist and Hashem shouldn't. The first component that Hashem conceals so we can exist. But once we exist, the goal is not to be dam, not to reach a piece of blood, but thought and speech. The goal is we have to become an Adam. We have to be a complete human being. How do we become a complete human being? When we connect to the Aleph, when we create unity with Hashem. So therefore, based on this, he explains that all these concealments, which basically means it was a helem after helem, concealment after concealment, wasn't that it should remain concealed and it's not revealed. But the ultimate intent is that it shouldn't remain concealment. That's not the intent. The intent is that the revelation should come down into this physical world where human beings are, and we should affect the dam, the blood, which is our thought and our speech, that we should connect with the Aleph, with Hashem. And then together, we're not going to have 2 halves, we're going to have one human being, one Adam. So real Adam is basically made up of 2 parts, our thoughts, our speech, connecting with Hashem. And this creates the impact, like he explains in that commentary, Rimzei Torah, that a person has to, I'll say it in Hebrew and in Yiddish, because it's beautiful. He brings these expressions. Lishbar, durchbrechen. We have to break. We have to pierce through all the materialism and to go higher and higher until you connect with Hashem. In other words, so what do you see from here? When we say a God, that the infinite part of Hashem is lamai and ketz, it doesn't mean Hashem's trying to create concealment, and so that we shouldn't connect. No. No, it's not that it should be a concealment. You can't even realize how concealed it is. The goal is to have the concealment and in there create the unity. And the unity is created in an internal way because a person is disconnecting from materialism, and you go higher until you connect with Hashem Himself. And that's what he explains. That's what he explains the idea of Oyer and Sof L'mayla Adin Ketz. And like he explains after in the Chassidic discourse, where it says in Eitz Chaim that in the beginning the infinite light of Hashem filled the whole empty space, and therefore there couldn't be room for anything physical to exist, because the fact is the infinite light was revealed, and because it was revealed, we couldn't exist in the revelation. So afterwards so the first level is God's revealed. God's revealed, we can't exist. Then the next level is Oyer and Sof L'mayla Ketz. L'man Tachas means the way it's in source, in the essence of Hashem, and over there, in its source, it has the power and the ability, but obviously you can't say that it filled the whole space, because obviously you can't say this in reference to the Ma'or, in the source of light, but only in the light. So in other words, the tzimtzum that takes place is only in the light, not in the source of light. And like he brings, like we said, we're going to go through every single Rebbe. So he said the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, and now he's going to bring what's from the Alter Rebbe. And he brings it from the powerful teaching from the Alter Rebbe, like he explains at length in Torah, and in many places also in the Torah, that when we say Hashem weighed the tzimtzum, the contraction, means He created the empty space, you can't, God forbid, say that the tzimtzum took place in what? In the Ma'or, in the source of light. The tzimtzum was only in the light. Because when you're dealing with light, you can say the light spreads out, and you can also say you contract the light. It's only a ray, it's not the thing itself. So this, when we say Hashem created a tzimtzum in the light, and now you have an empty space, it's only referring to light, not to the source of light. In other words, before Hashem created the tzimtzum, the light was revealed, and it filled the whole place. And because it filled the whole place, obviously the world couldn't exist because it was so powerful, like the Maggid says. But afterwards, you created the concealment. But the Ma'or, to be clear, the source of light is even, not only was it revealed then, but even today it's revealed. Even after you have the contraction, where it's totally clear, does nothing exist? No, the Ma'or never goes away. And like he explains powerfully, what the author explains in the Torah, that's why every single person has the power, wherever you are, whoever you are, to say Baruch Hashem. Why? If the light's off and you're in a dark space, how can you say Baruch Hashem? Because the Ma'or, the source of light, is always there. And even if it's men, women, children, in other words, what does it mean that everyone can say Baruch Hashem? Because the fact is, how can we say it? Because the Ma'or, the source of light, is always there. Contraction only took place in the light, in the ray. Because in the beginning it was revealed, and afterwards it was concealed. But the Ma'or, the source, is always revealed. And he continues on to say over there as follows. Since we're saying that it's Oyer Ein Sof, it's infinite, and in the true level it's infinite. So therefore, once we're saying that it's Oyer Ein Sof, it's infinite, so therefore, something that's infinite, you can't give any titles. You can't give any limitations to it. So therefore, you have to say that in the place where the light shone, you had Oyer Ein Sof, you had the finite light and the infinite light. This is fascinating. In the place where the light, Oyer Ein Sof, you had the infinite and the finite there. In other words, you had the light, which is finite, which allows for the world to exist, and you have also the light that there's no room for the world to exist. You have both of them, because otherwise, how can it be infinite light? So infinite means it has the power to reveal and the power not to reveal, the power to be finite, the power to be infinite. And that's why he brings in the Chassidic discourse from a classical teacher from Avodas HaKodesh, and he says that Oyer Ein Sof is actually the completion of everything. What does that mean? And he explains, just like it has the power with infinite, it has the power with finite. Because if you're going to say it's only infinite, then it's not complete. If it's only finite, it's not complete. It has both powers. But nevertheless, it does, even though it has both, but if the infinite light is there, how can the world exist? Even though you have the finite light. Why? Because the fact is, when the infinite light is shining, so yes, you have the finite light as well, but the finite light doesn't have a way to stand there. In other words, even though, yes, the finite light exists, but how can you see the finite light if you have the infinite light? So what do? You see the infinite light. and therefore the world couldn't exist. So therefore Hashem had to go ahead and create a tzimtzum, a contraction, and in the way that he totally contracted, again, remember the light, not the source of light, and that's why it's called an empty space, in reference to the light only. In other words, that the light that was revealed before now became an empty space, and it's totally empty and desolate. And after Hashem created the empty space, he brought in a small strand of light, one line, and through the line, that's what he used to create the world. So based on Hashem explains beautifully, this is how they answer the question where it says, Ani Hashem lo shanisi. I'm Hashem, I didn't change. And like it explains later on the Maimer, another term, it says, Atuhu achlei nivraim, Hashem is, from when he created the world to after, it's the same thing. So the question is, what do you mean? How can it be the same thing? There's a big difference. The fact is, before Hashem created the world, it was infinite. Then you had the tzimtzum, God contracted, and then you had creation of the world. And you have this physical world. And up to the point where it's like God is totally concealed. So how can you say there's no difference? So he explains, from what it says, the author explains in Shari Yichdamuna in Tanya, so seemingly, one second. He says, how is it possible to say Hashem didn't change? Because even when there's a change in Malchus, which is the lowest sphere of the world of Asiya, what does it say? Malchuscha Malchus Kaleilamim. In other words, that the kingdom of Hashem, the way it was before the Tzimtzum, that is a source of the kingdom of the whole worlds, even this world, even this physical world. So therefore, there's a change the way Malchus is in the world of Atzilus and the way it's in this physical world. So therefore, it should create a difference between one world and the next. But nevertheless, the question is, how does it say Ani Hashem lo shanisi? How is there not a change? And he explains very powerfully. He says like this: How did Hashem create the world? He created the world by the medium of called a tzimtzum, which means he created a space and he created an emptiness in the space. So what does that mean? When we say tzimtzum, we're saying it's a tzimtzum, but it's not. I'll say in Hebrew, it's not cause and effect. And because if there's cause and effect, that creates a change. But when there's a tzimtzum, there is no change. Why is that? Because when you have a cause and effect, so if something causes something, so it takes away from the source where it's from. So when there's a change in something, guess what? If you create something to happen, so let's say you put effort into do something, so you made something happen, guess what? Your effort went away. So ilul v'alul would call a change. Or for example, even deeper, he says, like when you use the term shefa means a flow, because when you're dealing with the idea of light, like he explains the Chassidic discourse, to understand the Chassidic starts with understand the idea of Oyer and Seif, L'mayel and Ketzman and Tachlis. He explains like this: when you say light means Oyer, not a flow. Why? Because when you have a change in the flow, when there's a flow of energy, so the person steering the flow, the mashpia, the one giving it, you will change. But over here, it wasn't a cause and effect, and it wasn't a flow. What was it? It was a tzimtzum, or a contraction. And especially the first contraction. What is that? What is the first contraction? It basically went to the side. And by going to the side, you created an empty space, and then the light comes back in. But the fact is, the contraction is only in the light, and only in the ray, but not a cause and effect. So therefore, because it's only a contraction in the light, so therefore it doesn't change anything in the essence of Hashem. Because the essence of Hashem didn't change. It wasn't involved. It was only in the ray. And the ray, it either was revealed or not revealed. So therefore, it wouldn't cause a change. But afterwards, he goes on to say even deeper. That even... So what do we have till now, before we go further? So in the source of light, it's not affected. It's nothing with the source of light. And it's not cause and effect. It's not a flow. There's the light. Either the light was shining or the light wasn't shining, but it has to affect the source. Now he's going to go deeper in saying, and this is powerful, even in the light that was shining, and then the light went out of the way, there is no change in the light as well also. Why? Even though you're going to say, one second, the light, there's a contraction of the light. First it existed, it didn't exist, and now you put it on a small light. So the fact is, there is a change. So, and the fact is, because you're saying, think what you're saying, you had no light, then you had light, then you had an empty space, and you draw in a light. So you're saying you draw in a small light. So obviously it is considered a contraction. And so, but nevertheless, what is he saying? That there is no difference when it comes to light. Why is that? And he explains like this. Now he's going to bring in a teaching from the Tzemach Tzedek and from the classical works of Mitzvahs, Harmonis, Holocaust. And he says as follows. He brings what he's brought down in another explanation of Oishus HaChaim, that even when it comes to the light, there is no change. Why? And he gives an example. Take, for example, Moshe Rabbeinu. We know Moshe Rabbeinu was a soul of the world of Atzilus. That's one example. Or, for example, from an example of prophecy, which is also connected to the world of Atzilus, the world of Bria, etc. Now, even though the fact is, when the temple was destroyed, there's no more prophecy. In other words, so what does that mean? It doesn't mean there's a change in prophecy, because today there's prophecy as well. The difference is we don't have the vessel to receive the prophecy. For example, he gives an example. If Moshe Rabbeinu existed today, Moshe Rabbeinu would still be in a Shem of Atzilus, just like then. So he didn't change. There's no change in the light. The difference is we don't have the power to receive it. So in other words, when it comes to prophecy and Moshe Rabbeinu and Shem of Atzilus, that light is shining. There's no change in the light. What changes, we don't have the power to receive it. And the same thing also, like he explains in the teaching of the mitzvah of Harmonis Holocaust, he says like this, and he gives another example. Take, for example, you have a teacher, and he's trying to teach something to a student. So the fact is, a very, very wise and a brilliant teacher, you can't compare his intellect to the intellect of a child. So in order for him the teacher to go ahead and teach the child, he can't just go ahead and spit it out the way he sees it. You need to dilute it and present it in the way that the child can receive it. So how do you do that? The process is you have to go ahead and take all your brilliant ideas and so to speak, put it on the side, and then pull out something the child can understand. Now, and this is a practical example. When the brilliant teacher takes his intellect and puts it aside, what does that mean? His intellect is in the garbage can? And he doesn't have it anymore? No. The intellect of the teacher is there. Just like before, there was no change. But he put it on the side, and this has nothing to do with the student. And the student has a connection with the teacher, doesn't affect the fact that the teacher had this brilliant idea right in his forehead, what he was thinking about. But the only thing that's not revealed right now. And even the finite intellect is not revealed. He's only sharing with him the part that he has to know. So based on this analogy, that you think about the teacher's idea, the intellect didn't change. The light of the intellect didn't change. He just pushed it aside, and he brought out a small light that he gave it to him. So this helps us understand that even from the light, when Hashem, the light was there, he created an empty space. That's it. There's a change in the light? No, the light was just moved aside. The light is nothing. The light didn't change. What happened is the receiver it can't receive it. And he receives the part that's appropriate for him. And like, for example, in times, the same thing would apply to Moshe Rabbeinu or the prophets, etc. They're prophets. Moshe Rabbeinu is the Shem of Atzilus. The difference is that whether we can receive it or not. It depends how much they're willing to share. And more than that, Rebbe says, like he explains in the Chassidic discourse of the Baali Lulav, which is the previous Rebbe, that so till now we said that the first level was there's no tzimtzum in the mor, in the source of light. Then we learned there's no tzimtzum in the light itself. Now he's going deeper and he's saying even the tzimtzum, the contraction, where you create that empty space, there's no difference also in the light. Why is that? And he says like this. And he gives another example of a teacher that wants to go ahead and teach and reveal his powerful ideas to his students. And he wants actually the student should be like him. And as the ultimate purpose of a teacher is that a student should become like the teacher. But in order for the student to reach that level, the teacher can't just go ahead and boom, give him all this information. He can't just on the level the teacher sees it. So what the teacher needs to do is he has to create a empty space. He has to create what we call in Kabbalah tzimtzum rishon, where he totally creates an empty space. And then you bring in like a small line, a small light. What does that mean practically? Intellect that the student can comprehend. And you have to bring it down not the way the teacher understands it. You have to bring it a small line that something that the student can receive. And then by bringing that small light and another small light and another small light, and the student starts working on his own, then the student has the opportunity and the possibility to be like the teacher. So in other words, so not only is there no change in the light, because the fact is the light is revealed, but the only thing the student it's not appropriate for the student. But even the contraction, and since the whole purpose of the contraction is, so why are you creating the contraction? Why are you creating the empty space? So the student could be like you. In other words, that the goal is the student should receive the infinite part that the teacher has. So what's the path? There's a path to get there. The first path to get there is a tzimtzum. So what do you see from here? That even while the teacher is creating the contraction of light and creating the empty space, in the air, you have the infinite part of the teacher. But in order for the student should reach that level, so you have to do this is part of the process. You have to create the tzimtzum. So therefore, it's not a true change. That's probably the key word. It's not a true change. It's only that the student should appear like as if there's a change, so he can receive it. But from the teacher's perspective, there is no change. And there's no contraction. What does the teacher see? My student is going to be like me. But right now, it's only in potential. It's only the beginning. And afterwards, it's going to happen in reality. So in other words, what is the point of the analogy? That when the symptom, from Hashem's perspective, there's no change. Not in the source of light, not in the light, and not even the symptom. Because Hashem, the ultimate goal is we should have everything. But He creates the concealment for us, that we should, as if it looks like there's a change, but really there's no change. Now, from all these components that the tzimtzum, the contraction affects, so the truth is, yes, nothing changed, but nevertheless, so nothing really changed from Hashem's perspective, of the analogy of the teacher, etc. But the fact is, in a revealed way, when it comes to the revelation, if you want to talk tachlis or practically in a revealed way, it is concealment after concealment from the student's perspective. Or like, for example, like the original teaching for the Baal Shem Tov, that said that the concealment created a letter Aleph, which a letter Aleph came from the concealment. The letter Bay is concealment until the letter Tav, up to the point you have a dark world. So but the concealment does create from the student's perspective, from the world perspective, a concealment. And that's why he continues on to say that even though that in everything we know that exists, there's something that's causing it to exist. Everybody knows it. But nevertheless, even though the reality is that something is causing it to exist, a person can make a mistake. And you're not going to think, because the concealment is so strong, you're not going to think that the energy is godliness. Up to the point that you can come to the opposite of that. Like he says in the Chassidic discourse, you can say, sadly, koichi di oitzim yadi, my power and my strength caused it to happen, when really it's coming from Hashem. Or like, for example, the famous quote that Pari said, Li oiri, it's my Nile, and I made it. Really? You made it? No, you didn't make it. Hashem made it. But you can make these false mistakes and false dreams that you think that you run the world. So Rabbi says, 1 second. Seemingly, when a person meditates a little bit, you can come. 1 + 1 is 2. You come to the realization that b'dvar Hashem shemayim nasu. Everything in the world came from Hashem. I'm ruach tivcha, so everything came from the breath of Hashem. And like now you bring in the teaching from Rebbe Marash, like you mentioned, he brings from everyone the Chabad Rebbeim, and he explains down in many places, and especially in his classical work of Mayim Rabbim, he says as follows: that this Chassidic discourse of Mayim Rabbim, which is one of the Chassidic discourses that the Rebbe Marash mentioned many times, and he says as follows: everything in this world, any physical thing, is made up of different foundations. How's it made up? By pulling together different foundations in the world. What happened, for example, fire, water, earth, the air, etc. What happens when the things fall apart? It wouldn't exist. In other words, what causes it to exist? The power that unites everything and unites all the different parts. So obviously, if you have four parts that put everything together, there's something that's putting all the four parts together. And it's obviously higher than that. And therefore, if a person had the power and the ability with their eye to see, what would you see? You would see the reality, the truth. Like the Atom writes in Tanya, that the words of Hashem is causing everything to stay in existence. That the words of Hashem is making it happen. It never uses in Yiddish. The words of Hashem make it happen and hold it up. Hold up the heaven and hold up the earth and everything that's in there. And something like this, you can come by meditating that and realizing that it comes all from Hashem. But nevertheless, why don't we see it? Why don't we look around? Why don't we see it? And the answer is because like he explains, Helem Acher Helem. Hashem is concealing himself and concealing himself. And Hashem is so concealed that sadly you can think the opposite. You can think that I created the world. Or the world happens by itself, or whatever you want to think. And like it says, when it's dark on the face of the earth, and or like Pari said that it's mine and I made it. Where's that coming from? It's coming from Helem Acher Helem, which basically is the L'mayla and Ketz. So the L'mayla and Ketz is referring to the ultimate concealment. That causes us to think, Chas v'Shalom, that Hashem is not the one that created the world, and Hashem is not the one maintaining the world. And that's why he says, like he explained before, that Oyrein Soif, the infinite part of Hashem, Lamata Adein Tachlis, and exists in the lowest levels. And in the lowest levels, Hashem is there in the level of what? Of Oyrein Soif. So the same thing also in the highest levels. Adein Ketz, and the highest levels. And up to the concealment of concealment, where a person can, God forbid, say, I'm the one that created the world. I'm the one that made the Nile. But even over there, it's at the level of the infinite part of Hashem is there. But the point is, it's there in every level in the way of concealment after concealment. And that's why he says, and he continues on the Chassidic discourse, he says, Ochein ata kel mistater. You are the God that's hiding. In other words, just like Kel, one of the God's names, Kel, which is referring to Chesed, Kel, the part that Hashem does Chesed, kindness all day. Now that, where Hashem does kindness, you see it. So obviously it's revelation. And that's the level of Lamat, that's because we see it. We see Hashem's godliness. Where does that come from? It comes from Hashem himself. The same thing also, Mistater, the part that Hashem is concealed. Concealment in concealment comes from where? The concealment comes from Hashem himself. That's specifically from the infinite part of Hashem. You can have the level of L'maylan Katz, which means the concealment after concealment. And like it's explained at length in the Chassidic discourse of Tafrei Samach Vav from the Rebbe Rashab and Tafrei Ayin Beis of the Rebbe Rashab, again, bringing in back all the different Chabad Rebbeim, and in many, many places in different discourses in the Rebbe Rashab, that just like that the power, the infinite part, the infinite bli gvul of Hashem, comes from where? The bli gvul amiti. There's the true infinite. So the infinite comes from the true infinite. The same thing also, the finite, and lower than that, the finite part also comes from the true infinite. So in other words, finite and infinite come from the true infinite. And what's the proof? Because the fact is, you can't limit the infinite only through something and higher than it. So from that perspective, on the contrary, you have to say that the power of finite, which means what God is hiding, is actually higher than from Hashem himself. So therefore, in other words, when you have the concealment, where's the concealment coming from? It's coming from the infinite part of Hashem himself. And like he brings examples and different parables, the way it exists, lower than the contraction of light, and the way it's in this world. Like for example, in the vessels of the world of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah, and even higher in the vessels of Atzilus, and before the Tzimtzum, up until the essence, which is referring to the ability for everything to be created. Notice where over there Hashem has the ability to light and not to light, and over there it's all equal. And then afterwards it comes down to the Oyrein Soif, the infinite, L'mayla, I think that's in the highest level, and to the lowest level. And that's what he explains. That's why he says, Ochein after kel mistater. What does that mean? That it literally comes in the place of mistater, in a place of concealment. Up to the point it goes into the world of klipot. Like it's like the Baal Shem Tov teaches us, and up until when the person does their spiritual work, and a person can say that my power is making it happen, or like Pari says, it's my Nile and I made it, and that's why both of these two different components is referring to the infinite part of Hashem, that the Oyer and Seif is L'mayla and Ketz referring to the concealment, and Lamata and Tachlis, but there's a big difference. What's the difference? Here he says the difference between L'mayla and Lamata in terms of the infinite part of Hashem. When it comes to Lamata and Tachlis, with the lowest part of Hashem, which means God is concealed, so where does it come from? Since there's a part that's revealed, it comes from the power that gets joined and the part that you can see some light. You know, you're dealing with a physical world, and you say, oh, Hashem is here as well. L'mayla Ketz it's dealing with such a level of concealment, which is coming from a place where it has the power not to shine, and has the power to conceal. And even in the level where it has the power to not to shine, the power to conceal, guess what? Over there, the infinite part of Hashem is there as well. And that's why he continues and explains afterwards, that's this powerful treasure. That even this treasure, what's the treasure? The treasure is the concealment where the most powerful part of Hashem is. And in order to win the war, not only does Hashem give us the power and the ability that Lamata and Tachlis, we're able to see godliness in this world, but Hashem gives us the greatest treasure. What is the greatest treasure? L'mayla and Ketz, that even in the concealment, even where Hashem has the power to conceal, Hashem gives us that as well. And through that, we go ahead and we're successful in the war. Now, and it's given to the soldiers in the war. Now, even though it's given to the people in charge of the war, but nevertheless, the goal is that through the people in charge of the war to come to the actually foot soldiers and the ones that are successful in the war. And they're the ones that make the success of war. And that's why they're called Tzivos Hashem. They're foot soldiers in God's army. And then what happens is, just like when we left Egypt, we went out, al Tzivoisam, and the Jewish people are called Tzivos Hashem. We're soldiers in God's army. So there is the same thing also. We will arenu neflis. We're going to see wonders. We're going to see wonders with Mashiach coming by doing our spiritual work in Gullus, in exile. And we're going to go out in war in a way that we take the treasures. What's the ultimate treasure? The treasure of Yirah Shamayim, being Or Hashem. And by being an Or Hashem in Gullus, we're going to merit to the treasure on high, which is basically the greatest concealment. We're going to have access to the most powerful tool of the greatest concealment, which Hashem is there. Achin Atakel Mistat, and we're going to be successful in the war. And the Jewish people are going to go out the Yad Ram with an outstretched hand. And it's going to happen through Mashiach Tzidkenu, and it's going to happen B'Karei very, very soon, B'Yameinu in our days. So here we have a very powerful Chassidic discourse. It's a deep Kabbalistic discourse. But here they're showing us that even this powerful tool, this powerful treasure of the greatest concealment and the greatest part of Hashem gives us to be successful in the war. And let's hope that we're successful in the war. And like Gemara finishes off, we're going to have the coming of Mashiach. The next class will be in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh. Have a great and blessed week. Shavua